Hello and thank you for tuning into Stampscaping 101. Here's another scene that I did on this folding matte purple cardstock. It's the Personal Touch packs by Kelly Paper. It's called Pinot Noir, but it's basically like a straight violet tone. I think it looks more kind of blue on my camera when I looked at it. It's a little bit more red in person, but the value of this is something like probably an 80%, in terms of light to dark. It's very dark, so these things are really fun, kind of defining your lighting within the scene. I'm normally working with, dye-based inks and applying those and making a white piece of paper darker and darker and darker. It's a really fun exercise to go back into something like this, a dark piece of paper, and to define your lights in it. The majority of this video is kind of, utilizing some white pigment ink to go in here, and, I just spread it around using this sponge applicator. I did use black in here, and also some, two colored pencils, but these are really minimal applications of it. I did a masked out pigment ink moon by just kind of sponging in those colors in there like that. But I don't know, it's really fun. As I mentioned in this video, when I start kind of laying this down, it's almost like adding in some sort of pastel or something like that, like a white pastel, and then kind of spreading it around. Which, by the way, if you were doing this and you wanted to use some white pastels or chalks, you can probably do that technique on, dark papers as well. That's a technique that's often used in drawing classes in terms of starting off with some kind of neutral, mid-tone paper, and then you bring out your highlights and your shadows, and it really teaches you to kind of manipulate and utilize light really effectively in your drawings. But anyways, that's what a lot of this is, and it really goes down in a pretty smooth manner because you can kind of really spread it around. If you do this, use a very light touch with this, these applicators. I did get a little bit of shredding right around the edge of this, but not too bad. But again, it was just barely touching this to your paper and just really kind of spreading it around. And I found that the pigment inks really do spread around and manipulate very easily. So I don't know. It's a really fun process. Very forgiving too, because you're starting on such a dark piece of paper, and when you're laying this down, you're not doing like a stark white, but it's kind of more just very translucent layers of these lighter tones. Then when you start to move into some black, I was able to apply some black dye-based inks right over the top of it, and I achieved some different gray tones where the black overlapped the white. And it's not like a linear process. I did go back with some white and came back into it. But again, this is all kind of an experiment. It's not really a technique-oriented thing because I really don't know what I'm doing yet, but kind of figuring it out. But it's a very forgiving process and a really fun one as well. It's really relaxing to add in those kind of lighter tones into it. I'm getting some glare off the paper, but can you see it like that? But it looks more like that in person without that glare. So anyways, if you choose to watch the video, I hope you enjoy it. I certainly had a fun time creating this scene and working in this type of technique. Okay, I had some fun yesterday using some of this purple folded cardstock to create this scene right here. There's just so little contrast in it. It's something that's, I wouldn't say it's out of my comfort zone, but I just don't normally do this kind of limited value range type of scene, but I really do love the look. I think it gives the scenes, I don't know, kind of a different kind of emotional feel, having that real limited window as far as this value range and having to kind of describe everything within a real limited, I don't know, range of values, and different emotional tones can be kind of developed that way, I think, So I'm going to try that again while I'm doing that, just to kind of get in the swing of it and feel of it. But I'm putting together this kind of wintry landscape, and I really want to utilize the kind of the two panel and then spread aspect of this in creating two different scenes. I mean, it's going to be one cohesive splash page, but I really want to, that being said, I think I'll work on this card folds is designed to fold a certain way. I think that was the interior. This one's the exterior. Maybe I'll work on the exterior side of it. Using this type of spread right here, the wheels will be running kind of the opposite direction. I'm just kind of doing this for spacing right here and trying to figure it out. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create kind of this arcing kind of snow line right here, and I'll put some trees back in here, and I'll use this hole punch here for to kind of create this full moon in the background here. I'm also going to try some of this Versafine over the top of some pigment ink, and we'll see how that works. Okay, so that being said, let's just go for just a kind of a nice little bit of an arcing snow line here. Okay, we'll go something like this. I mean, maybe I should do it this way. Maybe this will be better like that. Yeah, I think I like that look better. And let's see here. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm trying to think if I could use this opposite side for something as well. Maybe I can put some. I'm going to have a bank of trees back there, so if I didn't do that, I could use this side, and I can kind of put some white pigment ink down and define kind of that ridge line, but I don't know, I can use that for a different scene, I guess. Just figuring things out here as I go along, kind of winging it here, as far as my experiments go with this. Okay, so we have some Versafine black. I really love this black, especially on matte paper. I like it on glossy paper too, but when I'm doing it on glossy, I really have to wait for it to dry, you know, before I can put anything over it, and it takes a while. On matte paper, it seems to just absorb, you know, the moisture absorbs into the pulp of the paper, and the ink dries fairly quickly. Okay, so adding these in, and this is the Pine Row stamp. We'll just do a row of trees. You can also overlap with one another a little bit. Okay, something like that. Okay, so we have our row of trees, and that'll be our kind of bank of snow type of thing going on. Let's see. I want this creek to be coming out from the background as well. Maybe I'll put that up there. I'll put like a little bit of a foliage over here on the sides of the creek, maybe. Okay. This is just an unmounted stamp right here. The previous one was wood-mounted, of course, in the form of the Pine Row. This is block here, if you haven't seen my videos before, has some tack and peel on it. You can enter tack and peel if you don't know it, what it is, on YouTube, and you'll come up with dozens and dozens of videos. We have a couple of them on our channel as well, as far as the use and application of tack and peel by Scenic. And it just provides the temporary mounting of your bare rubber unmounted stamps. Okay, let's see, let's have this creek coming from the background, and I put the top of it right up in that tree line. I overlapped a little bit, and that's what you want to do with your Scenic stamps, so that you get this nice seamless aspect to it. Okay, so see where that kind of just comes out from the background there? Kind of frozen, yeah, not quite the tundra, but frozen world type of thing. Okay, I have a feeling this snowy landscape should give give me some opportunities for maybe some interesting effects that I can do with some colored pencils here. All right. I'm gonna watch it with my inked up stamps. Normally if it's a dye-based ink, I just put them anywhere, but this is, you know, pigment ink, so it's a little bit thick. So I just want to be careful not to place it somewhere that I'm going to be placing something on top of it, otherwise it'll leave a lot of ink, a lot of black ink. Maybe I should put these out. I'll put these off to the side. Okay, I have my wolves here. I really like stamping these wolves out. They're really fun. These kind of more silhouette-based images. I think this one's called Wolves Running. And I'll put them about like down here, maybe. Okay. I really like using these wolves in conjunction with the other smaller version of them as well. I was going to do that because I've already done that on several of the first scenes that I've made with them, but I don't know, that whole kind of pack aspect of the wolves family, you know, really seems to work out well. So maybe I will do them again, just to put something back up in there in the distance. And I just cleaned off my tack and peel yesterday, and it is super tacky again. Okay, again with the Versafine black. Put these ones higher up, objects that are higher up in the composition in Western perspective, and art usually represents something farther back in the distance. Okay. All right, let's add some foreground types of designs. Let's see, what should I do? This branch here, maybe I should go with more of a kind of a leafless branch. Or we can go with a couple things here. Here's this kind of leafless pine tree. Maybe that in conjunction with a few other things would look interesting. Perhaps. This size block will do just fine. You know, this design's hanging off right here, but I just plan on using the top of it anyway. Okay. So we'll add in some foreground using this. I kind of like to group things like that. Yeah, Okay, I thought that was... Let me throw one right over here just to kind of balance off the composition a little bit more. Okay. All right. I think I want to add a little bit more texture in here. So let's see. I have my little tiny, it's called Tiny Rocks Small. We see these rocks kind of sticking out of the snow over here. And let's carry that texture into a couple other areas. It just looks too smooth out here. Although, you know, this is snow, you would see that, but from, you know, artistic license, you know, kind of perspectives, you know, we don't always have to kind of just reference kind of reality. You can just kind of stamp whatever looks good, and that's the beauty of rubber stamping, is that, you know, these are kind of like stages, and you can kind of add things in according to just what looks good optically. So, you know, maybe something like snow looks really great, you know, in like a photograph or whatever, but when you're building something up from scratch, you know, just to, you know, potentially add more variation and contrast into certain areas from a, this would be from a textural standpoint, you know, maybe some, you know, something like this looks good. So there's no reason why you shouldn't add it, as opposed to being kind of locked in on, I don't know, kind of some kind of notion of a, I don't know, maybe the real world or something like that. This is what they always say. You know, we're creating something from scratch here, and there really isn't a point in doing something that's so kind of, you know, indebted to, or not indebted to, but locked in on doing something that a camera can do much more effectively, you know, in a 60th of a second or something like that, you know. So for me, this extra texture around in here just adds a little bit more visual kind of variety within the scene. So I stamped these out doing in various incarnations of ink. So I stamped it out 1, 2, 3, you know, just to get a variety of values of that image stamped out in here. And it just texturizes things, and I think it anchors things down a little bit more than it was without it. Doesn't mean you have to put it in there, you know, you don't have to. But I don't know. What people used to say in my workshops all the time is they weren't sure if they should add something or not, you know. I'm sure, yeah, or they, you know, I'd ask them, you know, how are things going on their scenes, and sometimes they'd be contemplating something, you know, which, I mean, I do too. And, you know, most of the times I would just say, you know, why don't you just give it a try and see if you like it. You know, there's no point in time when you can't go back and redo a scene or something like that, but, you know, just to experiment around and, you know, test something out, and if you like it, great. If you don't, well, most of the times it's not a matter of, too, it's like, okay, you know, like a love-hate type of thing. You know, you can try something out, and, you know, maybe you didn't like it as much as it could have been, but, you know, it's usually not something that kind of ruins something. It's usually just something that's more kind of neutral, you know, the results. Okay, now I'm going to wipe off some of the bottom of this inked up rocky peaks. Okay, these are going to be some background mountains. I'm going to wipe off a pretty good portion of this, but I'm doing it with a dry paper towel so that there's still some ink on here, okay? but there's just less down here, so it transitions from wet to dry ink. So it should stamp out from dark to light, or lighter, okay? Sometimes I don't take off enough and it seems like, oh, you know, it's really dark everywhere, but usually it transitions a little bit at least. And the reason why I'm doing that is it transitions into that tree line down there. I don't want that tree line to completely kind of disappear amongst, you know, the texture of the mountain here, so I want that tree line to remain, but I don't want just a hard straight line with that mountain back there. I want it to transition from dark to light so I can still see some of the lighter mountain back there behind the darker trees, okay? Let's take a look at that. And you can see it transition down there. So we still have some of that. But see, if this mountain up here, down here, was the same darkness, the tree line right here would kind of disappear in that texture, kind of like it does over here. I didn't take off as much ink, but we can really see these ones stand out, but you still have the impression of the mountain. It's just not as dark. Alright, let's do the same thing again. So re-ink and wipe off. Okay. Okay, and I'll put another mountain over here. Okay, I kind of stamped it a little bit lower for some variation, and I'll put another one over here. Now I'm not going to use the whole thing, it's just going to be a little snippet, but ink up more than you think you'll need, but anyways, but okay, wiping off down below. Do something like that. Okay. I might want to fill in a little bit. There's a little gap in between that mountain. I kind of wanted to make it look like there was kind of some space in between there, but maybe I won't. Maybe I want a little bit in there, so let's kind of wipe this off. I just colored this little peak in right here, and it's really, I tell you what, I'll really blot this one out a lot right here. So let's mask off a little bit, like about like that, and we'll just plop this one right in there, a little bit. Okay. See that right there? I got a little bit right there too, but it's so light it just looks like it's in the distance. Okay, so we have our mountain system back there. Don't know where it is. The Rockies or something like that, maybe. Who knows? Okay. So fairly large scene, huh? Alright, now let's do a little experiment here. I mean, the whole thing's kind of an experiment for me, but here's this paper punch. I don't know, this is roughly, it's a little bit larger than a nickel, you know, smaller than a quarter. Alright, that'll be our full moon there. So it'll look like something like that. If I wanted to, I can have it kind of coming up from behind the mountains. I would have to mask off the mountains, though. But that looks pretty good, too, this full moon. I think it looked good anywhere, you know? Can you imagine that coming from behind that mountain? You could have a mountain. But that, I don't know, compositionally, this looks pretty good up here. Kind of really has everything going that way, of course, because the wolves are going that way. But if I put this here on that side, it kind of positions that lighting coming from that way. So, all right. So let's start to. I guess you could actually use this. You could, you know, glue it in there. That might be kind of interesting to have other things like that. But let's just keep this one in the pigment ink family as far as I don't know, inks, an inked scene as opposed to multimedia. Let's see, this is a Color Box Frost White. Okay, let's see, maybe I'll see if I can go multi-tone on this. Okay, so I'll add a little bit more on the top, and I'll try to have it transition a little bit lighter. I'm used to working multi-values with dye-based inks, but not pigment inks, so I'm usually using, you know, some version and working it down to light. But since I'm working light on dark, it's a little bit of an opposite type of feel. Okay, I think I'm getting it. Okay, I'll keep coating it more on the top. From what I've found, dye-based inks tend to dry darker than what they look like when they're freshly applied, so we'll see if that's the case with this one. Alright, so I think I have a nice transition right there. A little bit less would have been good too, but we'll see. Like I said, maybe that'll dry a little bit darker down there. I'm not sure. Okay, so we have our moon up there. Alright, now we're going to have to apply some of that ink in other areas. You know what, I think I'm going to use this one. So if I do this right here, I think I can apply some of this pigment ink down here like it's shining on this, you know, the surface. Let me try to do some of that. Alright, bear with me. Also, this might be better for it, this brush. Maybe I'll use both. Let me test it out with the stylus tool here first. Okay. Maybe I'll use it like a brush, okay. Let's try it like this. It's a real powdery, of course super dry kind of feeling doing this. And I'm not doing it hard, I'm just barely touching the page and just kind of doing that wipe. Okay, let's kind of transition it a little bit. So kind of apply some, then I'm kind of pushing it down. The feeling feels more like I'm using pastels or something like that, or chalks, than ink to me. It's because of that aspect where you can kind of push it around, you know. Because pigment inks, unlike dye-based inks, they're designed to sit on the surface of your paper. You know, they don't stain or absorb as much. I'm sure they do a little bit, but so the feeling is very different. Kind of in a good way, because you can really kind of, it gives you some time to manipulate. You know, you can kind of move it around. You can probably move it around with my finger too, just smearing it a little bit and getting it to go where I want it to go, maybe. I have this upside down because it's easier for me to get to from this side, you know, this angle.
much, much easier. So always flip your cards around to an angle that's the most conducive for whatever application process you're working in. Alright, let's see what we have here. Alright, kind of a frozen, kind of a glowing surface right here. Looks okay. There would be shadows from those trees, and I'll apply those in there as well. I'll apply them back into that. But, it's more like stage production than, lighting of the real world. Or the natural world. Okay, kind of bringing this down a little bit more. I'm going to use this arc here as like a mask for some of these other tufts. Okay, so right there I kind of went along with the arc of those, and I'll do the same thing up here. Just trying to get part of this arc that naturally fits so I can use it again for something else. This paper is so dark that kind of any addition of this white really stands out. So sometimes I don't think I put down too much, but then when I lift the mask, it really stands out quite a bit. Yeah, see that? Okay. Now, in daytime types of scenes, I often have my water remain light, and I put the area around it darker. But in nighttime scenes like this, and in winter, kind of the water is often kind of darker, minus maybe some highlights or something like that. So I think I'm going to try to do that. Make the water darker, and it should be pretty easy, because when we're talking about doing something on this type of process right here with this type of technique, it's really just utilizing your black, so we don't have to go through a lot of different color schemes at all. Okay, let's kind of bring that reflective snow out a little bit more. I'm just kind of using the edge of this stylus tool right now. It's kind of nice to be working in such kind of this light subtlety. I like subtle marks, but I don't know, my scenes often don't come out very subtle at all, either you know, there's a lot of, I think I have subtle marks in terms of a lot of the detailing, which I really love, but I don't know, they're usually kind of more, you know, kind of drama-filled, you know, with the amount of contrasts and things like this one's. This one's kind of definitely more about subtlety and trying to, you know, get, you know, a lot of that drama within this really limited range. It's really fun. Okay, again, I just use a real light touch. Now, I am going on dry pieces of paper here, you know, so it's going dry on dry. And the paper has a little bit of texture to it, so I am getting a little bit, you know, once in a while I'm doing this and I'll see a little tiny bit of the sponge here kind of tear off, but so far it's just been a couple crumbs, so very, very light touch, you know, with it. Keep a very light touch and you should be fine. But I really like this. I like this look of what this is kind of moving towards. See that? The light shining right there on that part. That's where it got a little bit, you know, more illuminated. Maybe I can add some more of that down there. Okay, as I do this, I mean, it didn't take too long, but slowly kind of getting the feel of this light on dark application. Maybe I can utilize this. Maybe I can go back to my, you know, colored scene work and kind of take this technique over to it, because I really like that subtle, you know, kind of addition, you know, it's really starting to build up. It's like, hey, look at me, I'm painting, you know. Not really, but, you know, I'm not a painter at all. But the look kind of, I don't know, it has kind of a painterly, I don't know, not really pastels, but kind of, because you're laying down these real powdery kind of touches here of a very light a light kind of incarnation of, you know, it's pigment ink, but it really feels like paint in many ways. Getting the feel. There's a little bit more pigment ink in some areas of this brush I'm finding. Applicator brush. This is a very relaxing process. I wasn't planning on doing so much with this pigment ink on here, but I really like the look. And it's going back and adding light on dark, so it's almost like a, I don't know, a reverse process. I was always convinced in my stamp board workshops that because everything got so quiet in there when people were doing that part of the process of adding lights on darks, and they were just, it's not that they had to concentrate so much. Everyone was doing it very free form, but I was convinced that, you know, when doing this type of thing, it's almost like kind of engaging a different part of the brain, I think. You know, it's almost like, I don't know, like meditative or something like that when doing it. And it didn't take them very long to get kind of into the spirit of it. We're usually used to adding in dark things over light, you know, additive. But when this is almost like you know, if we're working on white pieces of paper, it's almost like, you know, retrieving that white ness of the paper. Work in reverse, you know. It's almost like a subtractive process. I mean, this is an additive process now, but there's something to that aspect of it. I don't know, probably not making sense here, but yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's like some kind of like meditation or whatnot. Okay, now I'm adding some of this down at the base of some of these wools to kind of represent maybe some haze or fog. You know, at the low-lying fog in the in this area. Ooh, that looks really good. Right down here. Look at that. My camera's having a hard time focusing and it's so dark. All right. Okay, now let's try to add some of this down on my mountains. Okay. At one point in time, I had a mask for my mountains. And I have it here, except this one is the positive part of it. I bet you I tossed out the negative side of that. Yeah, I did. I need the negative part of this, but actually, maybe I'll use that for something. Alright, now let's go in and start adding in some shadows, so let's get rid of this right now for now, and let's pull out the black dye-based ink. Maybe I'll go to the Versafine black as far as some additional tones to lay in here. But let me try this Marvy black in here, okay? Let's add some variation to my sky. I said that with kind of a question mark. Everything's kind of an experiment right now, so let's just see where this goes. Now I did this on, you know, the scene yesterday too, and I like that kind of that mood of the additional tones up here. And just like on any kind of colored scene, you can really flesh in your objects with some more color. You can kind of follow along with the shading convention that has been inherently drawn into places like these mountains. So where you see kind of darker areas on the mountains, you can kind of follow suit with some additional tones, okay? So right in here, I'm just kind of, you know, adding that in there. You can see that black up there. And again, it's a really kind of strange feel because it is, you know, just so matte, you know. It's not even matte cardstock, so it's not like a coated cardstock, so the feel of it is kind of scratchy when I add this in. I think I will try to drag some of this over the moon a little bit, maybe. I'll get some tone in there. Yeah, there we go. That pigment ink is, you know, staying intact very well. It's not smearing or anything. Again, this is on a very absorbent matte paper. Okay, so at the base of some of these trees, maybe I'll come into this snow area and add a little bit of black down there. Now, some of that might be still wet, but we'll see how it reacts. So far, I think it looks pretty good. It's kind of turning some of that black into more of a gray, which is kind of nice. Okay, see
See what's going on there? Okay. Maybe on the sides of some of these mountains, on the kind of the darker side of the mountain, I'll add a little bit of tone. This is black, but it's not like a straight black because I'm just adding in like a very little amount at any given time. Maybe I'll try something like this with the mountain here. I have my mask pre-trimmed, which I never do. It just happened to be, I happen to have this one from a previous video. I almost never mask anything off, but let's get some additional tones behind these ones. Kind of a night sky type of thing going on. Okay, right there. Alright, let's go into this water down here. Let's start to flesh in kind of what's going on down here as well. So, like around the water's edge, I'll try to give this give the banks a little bit of mass by adding in some additional tones. I'm just going with a real thin line like that. Colored pencil will work really well too, black colored pencil. I'll be able to get into the much more detailed, small areas with that. Okay, see that right there? My water. A little tone down here, 4 corners, just to kind of frame things off a little bit. Kind of creates a nice vignette type of look. Okay. Same thing down here, lower right corner. You can also do some like cloud masking up here, you know, with a torn paper towel, and do those types of things as well. Might be kind of interesting. I don't know if I'll do it on this one, but okay, adding a little bit of shadows down here to my base. Just kind of reiterating the shadows that are already in the design, just with a little bit of extra tone. Something like that.
I really enjoy doing this type of process. This is really kind of fun. It seems to be like super forgiving too, naturally. I mean, if you're going with dark onto something already very dark, you know, if you get some kind of mark that you don't really like, it's really hard to see, you know, anyway, because it's already dark down there. So the contrast between what you're laying down and the, you know, the background surface is just, you know, it's not very apparent. So, and I haven't done a lot of these, you know. I did, you know, some blue ones, you know, I don't know, it might be even a couple years by now. Maybe it was last year, you know, the ones with those whales and stuff. But like some of those were the first, and I haven't done any since, I don't think. Okay, so let's take a look here. Okay, now let's switch back here. I wanted to lay down some shadow work. Let's go back into some of this white, and on these mountains up here, let's have some of the mountains kind of in the areas that are kind of on the side of the mountain facing the moon. Let's illuminate some of those mountains a little bit with some additional tones, you know. And I'm kind of usually going for the top and then swiping it down like that. So hopefully I get a, you know, slight kind of tapered application of that ink. So just a real light touch. And if you look on the designs itself, the mountain design, you'll find, you know, there's certain areas on there that are already light. And I'm just kind of going in and reiterating that lighting on the mountain, on the side that's facing the light, you know, the source of light. Just reiterating that on the image. So if there's an area of the image that's facing the light but it's all in shadow, I'm typically not illuminating that. I'm just doing it on the areas that are a little bit lighter, or light, or very light. Generally, if it, you know, like mountain peaks, you know, are the natural, you know, area to put the highlights on. Light mountain peaks. See that? Just kind of bringing them out a little bit. And right where it's around the moon, it's a little bit lighter. I'm applying more of that tone. Okay. I just got an idea. Boy, do I want to do that, though. I'm not sure. I'm thinking about some Dr. Martin's bleed-proof white. It is so white, though. But it might be kind of an interesting texture over this. Yeah, I got it a little bit too light in there. Let me darken that up a little bit. Using my magic eraser. Okay, something like that. Okay, let's go and check out some things with this colored pencil. Okay, so we have a lot of our light and darks kind of established in here. This is the way this card looks folded, you know.
in this scene right here. Kind of makes a nice composition as well. You open it up, and you get the full composition. All right, this is a lavender colored pencil, and it really matches the the purple. The color of this paper, by the way, is, we call it Pinot Noir. Personal touch folding cards. It's from Kelly Paper. I don't know if they sell these online or not, but you know what I mean? This is just your basic purple matte, I don't know, paper. I don't think it's cardstock. And you can do this on any colored paper, You can use darker, lighter, medium tones, whatever. Okay, just adding some of this down, and naturally a colored pencil can be a little more detailed than, or a lot more detailed than, a sponge tip like that. So remember what I said about kind of mountain peaks, you can get in and add your areas into your details into your scene. Look at the points of those mountains, like that. Okay, maybe these ones that are a little bit, are a lot farther away in the darker areas, maybe you can just add a little bit. Kind of as it transitions, farther away from the light. I mean, it would really be the same distance if it's the moon, but just from a visual standpoint of your scene, we can kind of transition it a little bit more to go in the theme of your scene, as opposed to what might be referenced more in the real world, so to speak. Okay, so you can see those mountain peaks are kind of standing out a little bit out that way. See that? And at no point in time, I'm not making any of these peaks lighter, I should say. Not brighter, but lighter than the source of light there. Okay. And here we go. This is black, just your black Prismacolor. And, let's see, maybe I can just darken in some areas. As I see fit, I'm kind of working in, some general areas. Maybe on this side of this peak, on the opposite side, maybe I can darken that in a little bit. It just puts a little bit of variation in your scene. And again, for the most part, I'm kind of darkening in those areas that are already dark. I'm just kind of reiterating that a little bit. I kind of define some a little bit more. See that kind of darker, haze out there. So when you look at it overall, there's a little bit more variation within that mountain system. Maybe I'll darken it over here, just to kind of create a stronger kind of framing tone. I can hit my shadows down here a little bit more again. All right, now this is going into some really small details here, but we have these rocks down here, okay? And I can add a little bit of shadows, around some of those rocks, for a real detailed type of touch, okay? Don't go too hard, you want them to be kind of more of a, gray value. You don't want your shadows to be darker than the actual objects if they are black, like that. Here's some shadows down here in the those very subtle
rocks in the water. Kind of extend your... You can make the edge of the water a little bit more distinct with a little bit of this, and then take that out. All I'm doing is this right here. So I'm not doing this. I'm doing this right here. Oh, sorry. Zoomed out too far. I'm doing this right here with black. Okay, I'm not doing this. Alright, it's just very subtle. Here's the black ink right here. And you can match that just with your pressures that you put down. You can go all the way to, like, nothing, depending on how much pressure you're putting down on it. So you can create a lot of variation with your pencil just by how much pressure you apply or how many layers you put down. Alright, just in general, I kind of like to do my, edges and perimeter of the card a little bit darker than, the center, so it kind of looks like we have, light coming from within the card. Okay, so maybe I'll go a little bit heavier up here, corners. Put a little more shadows right around these trees here. Okay, kind of Spirit of the Wild type of thing, huh? Alright, now this, these creases, the folds, are a problem, when you get down to the impression, so you can kind of go back in and fill in, get, right next to that fold where some of the impressions didn't stamp out. Something like that. Kind of like that haze, Let's try to put some haze up in these trees. Let me see if I can do this. Okay, I don't know. Little creepy little haze kind of hovering around in those trees. I wanted some variation in there. They were looking, that space in there just was so kind of void of some additional textures maybe, or light and dark. I don't know, it seems like a scene that's kind of just screams like, kind of a fog or haze or something like that, so just applying kind of a thin layer of this here and there. Yeah, there we go. I think it looks pretty good.
we go. So a little bit of haze back there. I didn't even re-ink this, I just used what was on there. Okay, now, where'd that lavender pencil go? Oh, here we go. Let me try to put some little highlights on some of these trees here, if I can. I'd use a white pencil, but I don't know where they all are. And I don't want to take the time to go look, so just anything kind of nice and light. Preferably within the color scheme. I don't think I'd want to use yellow here, you know what I mean? Yeah, looks pretty good. See that? A little bit of highlights on those trees. Looks funny real close up, but this is what it looks like, kind of just from a distance. It's just capturing some of that light. It pulls them out from the background a little bit more, having little kind of subtle little marks on it. It's like little hatches, you know, that I'm doing. Like adding little dots here and there. I'm doing a little bit of lighting on the backs of some of these walls might be interesting as well. And just illuminated in the moonlight. Subtle. See where they're kind of backlit, you know, literally on their backs. Okay, here's these trees right here. Okay. And this could be kind of capturing some of that moonlight as well and kind of reflecting it back. So I'll do it on the right-hand side of the tree. And maybe on a few of these branches, little check of lighting on it, like so. Right, I find it really effective sometimes, right where it, kind of the branch meets trunk, to give it a little bit of a, highlight like that. See, there was side lit, not over everything, okay? But then you have it where it's reiterating that moonlight. Okay, now here's this branch over here. Let's do the same thing, but maybe it'll be on the opposite side of the branch, okay? Or the tree. Because this tree is now to the right of the moon, so I'll have this maybe slightly more. It's almost like underneath it, so it doesn't really matter. You can put some on both sides, but maybe it'll be slightly more left side dominant as far as the highlights go. So something like that. Okay. See, that's capturing that moonlight. All right, now I didn't do it on this because I just didn't think about it, but this might be an instance where you can stamp some things into the scene using white pigment ink, so maybe a white bush or something like that, with a lot of it'll look more like it's like it covered in ice or something like that. I can't really do that now. I'd have to do it in an area where I didn't put down any Prismacolors because, well, I don't know, maybe a Brilliance might stick to that, but I'd just be afraid that my ink wouldn't stick to wax, be it pigment or... But the Brilliance might have a chance, but, I don't know if I want to do that now. Because I already have all this kind of established in dark. Okay, now we have these rocks down here as well. And
lighting on them here and there. A little kind of light amongst the shadow work. Okay. Background, a little bit of illumination maybe. Just kind of bringing some areas to life a little bit with a little bit of light and dark. See, this one's a little back in here. Here, you get that little backside illumination. Trees, some rocks. See all these rocks over here. This area here doesn't look bad to me or anything like that, but it's kind of just lost space. So, I mean, if you put a few little highlights here and there like this, it just kind of adds some lighting back into it. Here, this is a perfect spot actually. There's some rocks in the water, and I'll put a few little highlights on those. Okay. Down here in this water down here, we have this kind of lost area in terms of visual variety. So let's go down and add a few little highlights here and there, or lighter areas. Okay, so that being said, let's add a little bit of, in the middle of this, why don't we add a little bit of a kind of a water lighting reflection down the center of this water area. Maybe it's ice, maybe it's completely frozen over, probably. The wolves look like they're running pretty hard. I don't know if they're just going to run into it or what. Maybe they're thirsty if it's not completely frozen over, but I don't know. Wildlife tends to know what they're doing, so. Okay, so a little bit more variation happening in here. Fun stuff. All right. I'm going to put a couple stars up here. You won't be able to see too many with the full moon, but I don't know. Maybe out in nature, we're far from city lights. Maybe you can see a few stars here and there. All right, now let me see about a word stamp and see if anything would be appropriate. I'm thinking about Spirit of the Wild, but I'll see if it fits in here. Okay, I like this one for this. I thought Spirit of the Wild for sure off of a different plate, but how fiercely, devotedly wild is nature in the midst of her beauty-loving tenderness, and I have space for it right here. And I'm just going to put it right in here. Another place I could do it is on the interior of the card. I mean, I can make it on the exterior of the card too, like right here. And then they open it up. And here's this scene right here, but they can do it like this too. And they open it up and here, it says it right here too, dear whatever, and sign it. But, I mean, if I did that, I would probably stamp it on something else and I would mat it, just make it a little more, I don't know, fancy or whatever. But I'm just going to put this one right on the scene itself. All right. Test print. my ink pads are very they're very unevenly inked, so I just want to make sure it's not too blobby, you know. I don't know, when you're using pigment ink pads, the ink is so thick it does tend to look a little bit more blobbed up, you know, in some areas. Let me get this a little bit straighter on here. Okay. This is what I do too for kind of practice registration, you know, in terms of the angle. Okay, that's better. It's like my internal stamp positioner. I just, you know, I could use a stamp positioner and not wing it like this, but that's what I end up doing anyway. Just winging it. Okay. Alright, just doing this in the color box, Frost White. I don't want it to look too light, okay? Now that looks lighter right now, but it should be about that value, kind of when it dries. Actually, it's getting lighter as I watch it right now. It's kind of getting darker. Did I say lighter? It's getting darker as I just watched it. It's like almost like it starts absorbing, you know, the moisture into the surface of the paper. But I don't know. I love copy and you know, text and visuals a lot. And designs like this, when I was doing these scenic sentiments, man, it took me forever. I think I mentioned that before. Forever to get the spacing right on all those letter forms. I agonized for that on those for months and months and months just to get the spacing right in between those words and bumping them over like a micromillimeter. It's going back to my lettering and typography class in college. The professor was the head of the graphic design department, so every micromillimeter of text is scrutinized. And I mean that too. It's not just a millimeter. Millimeter's huge, you know, in terms of space. You have to really get everything down perfectly. Okay, so let's take a look at this here. I'm going to see how dark that gets. It's getting darker as I watch it here, though. But I was going to say, if it's that bright, I can brighten up some other areas down here. But if that gets really, you know, a lot darker than is what I suspect, I don't want anything to be, you know, so much brighter than the text. I want it to be as bright as the text in there. But anyways, I think I have the gist of most of this down here. I think there's a different type of feel that you can achieve, you know, with the use of darker papers and kind of methodology like this, and utilizing so many of the lighter tones, you know, to apply light on dark, you know, which I do really minimally in color work, but on here it really can be everything when that's really all you're, you know, having to work with. I did work with the colored pencils and black in terms of tones there, but you know, this one scene ended up really mostly about the you know, what the light on dark could provide, and just bringing out some different subtleties, you know, within the different objects, reiterating the lighting that's coming, you know, being established, and you know, for the most part, just defining in subtlety. But I say subtlety, the technique itself was not really subtle at all. I mean, I was really, you know, going in here and really spreading that stuff around a lot, and it allowed for that too. It just it really seems super forgiving because you can really, from what I found here, it was really kind of spread some stuff around. It's like you lay down a little of this kind of thicker paint and it's sitting on the surface, and it really allows, you know, a decent amount of time to kind of spread that around, you know, like pastels or something like that. So, or chalks, you know, you can kind of manipulate it after you've already laid it down. So that is kind of a really fun and nice aspect of I'm kind of putting these wolves in a little bit more of this kind of fog. Kind of gives them a little bit more of a, I don't know, magical quality, maybe mystical. See that right there? Okay. All right, so anyways, I think it's done for the most part. Hope you enjoyed the video, if you chose to watch it, and if you made it this far, I would be handing out these medals to you if I could. But thanks for watching. Thanks as always for tuning into the channel.